All right, so for our next set of examples, we're going to be doing the same thing where we're going to find the exact value for sine 2 theta and cosine 2 theta, and then state what quadrant the answer is in. So looking at our given information, we are starting in quadrant 1, and I'm going to need to find cosine in order to figure out this sine of 2 theta. So I'm going to start by drawing my right triangle. And sine, we have the opposite side as 1, hypotenuse is 4. So to find our missing side, we would have 1 squared, which is 1, plus our missing side squared equals 16. Subtract that over to get 15. And then we would take the square root. So square root of 15 is that missing side, which then means that our cosine theta, so the adjacent side, square root of 15 over 4. Now again, it doesn't matter which one we start with, but I usually just do them in order. So I'm going to start with that sine of 2 theta. And there's only one formula for that, so that's that 2 sine theta cosine theta. So we would take 2 times 1/4 times the square root of 15 over 4. Okay. All right, so 2 times 1 times the square root of 15 is 2 square root of 15. And then we're assuming that 2 is over 1, so 1 times 4 is 16. And then these are both divisible by 2. So then our final answer is going to be the square root of 15 over 8. All right, so next we are finding cosine 2 theta. Now we have 3 formulas to choose from. Again, it does not matter which one you choose. Since we are given sine, I'm going to choose that third one again. So that was 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. So we're taking 1 minus 2 times 1/4 squared. So again, at this point, if you want, you can just type that all into your calculator, or you can keep simplifying by hand. So that'd be 2, this would be 1/16. And then if I multiply the 2 in, that's 2/16, which is going to reduce to 1/8. And then 1 minus 1/8 is going to be 7/8. And then to answer the second part of the question, what quadrant is our answer in? So again, if you need to, you can write this out. So all students take class. So our sine answer and our cosine answer are both positive. So that means that it has to be in this first quadrant. All right, let's keep going. So our next example, and they are giving us sine. And then if we're between 270 and 360, that means that we are in the fourth quadrant. So again, I'm going to start by drawing my triangle in the fourth quadrant this time. So sine is opposite over the hypotenuse. So that means that we will have 1 plus b squared equals 64. Subtract the 1 over. And then we would take the square root of both sides. And then this time we are able to simplify the square root of 63 because it's divisible by 9. So if we're thinking of how we would split it, it's 9 times 7. So then we would take the 9 out as 3. And so this side is 3 square root of 7. And then for cosine, that means, so cosine theta is the adjacent side, so 3 square root of 7 over 8. And now I'm ready to start finding what the question is asking for. So again, starting with sine 2 theta, we are using the formula of 2 sine theta cosine theta. So this will be 2 times -1/8 times 3 square root of 7 over 8. So 2 times -1 times 3 is -6, and then we just keep that square root of 7 with it. 1 times 8 is 64. And then we need to reduce that because they are both divisible by 2. So then this will be -3 square root of 7 over 32 as our final answer for sine 2 theta. All right, cosine 2 theta. So I'm just going to pick a different formula this time so you can see what that would look like. So this time I'm going to pick the top one. So cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. So that means that we would have, so cosine, so 3 square root of 7 over 8 squared minus our sine squared, so -1/8. Okay. So looking at this, for this I need to square the 3 and this 7, square root of 7. So when I do that, the 3 becomes a 9, and then the square root cancels out, so we would just be left with 7. So 9 times 7 is 63, and then 8 squared is 64. And then if I square this, it is 1 over 64. And 63 minus 1 is 62 over 64. And then we can reduce that because they are both divisible by 2. So if I divide them each by 2, this will be 31 over 32. And then to figure out the quadrant that our answer is in, so all students take class. So looking at that, cosine is positive. So technically it would have to be in one of these two, but our sine is negative. So because cosine is positive and sine is negative, that happens in this quadrant. So our answer would be in quadrant 4. All right, so if we keep going, we are given cosine this time, and if we are between 180 and 270, that is quadrant 3. So again, we're just going to start by drawing that right triangle. So cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So this will be 9 plus b squared equals 25. Subtract the 9 over, so that will be 16. And then if we take the square root of that, b is 4. And then because we went down, I have to make it a negative. And this time we need sine theta, so that is opposite over the hypotenuse. All right, so if we find sine 2 theta next, so again, we're using 2 times sine theta cosine theta. So 2 times -4/5 times -3/5. So if we just multiply, the 2 times -4 times -3 is going to be 24. And then 1 times 5 is 25. And that won't simplify anymore, so that is going to be our final answer. And let's see, so next we are finding cosine of 2 theta. So I'm deciding which formula to use. Now since I was given cosine this time, I'm going to use the middle formula. But it does not matter which one you choose, we'll get the same answer no matter what. So this is 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. So we will have 2 times -3/5 minus 1. So this will be -6/5 minus 1. So again, if I wanted to do this by hand, I would think of this as over 1, and then our common denominator would be 5. So I'm really doing -6/5 minus 5/5, which is -11/5. So that will be my final answer. Oh wait, hold on. Nope, I apologize. I didn't square this. Okay, well, see, it's a good thing to be able to recognize your work and if you make mistakes. So let me redo this part. So 2 times, so 9/25 minus 1. So that is 18/25. And then again, if I'm thinking of a common denominator, we would be subtracting 25/25. So 18 minus 25 is going to be -7/25. Okay, yeah, that answer makes more sense. And the reason why I didn't think this made a lot of sense when I got to it is because usually these denominators are the same, or they're a lot closer together. So that's why I kind of went back and looked at my work here. So again, that's just a good thing to be able to recognize if you do work through something and you are looking at your answers and they're not making sense, to double check your work. Okay. And then to find where our final answer is at. So sine is positive, cosine is negative, and that happens in this quadrant. So our answer is in quadrant 2. All right, this is going to be our last example for these types of problems. So notice how they gave us radians this time instead of degrees. So we would just convert that. So to do that, we're just taking it times 180/pi. So this is really 90. And then that one would be 180. So that puts us in quadrant 2. And this time they are giving us tangent. So tangent is, so we're thinking of SOHCAHTOA. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I only have one number, so I'm assuming that it is over 1. So opposite would be the 2, and then adjacent is 1. And then I have to decide where the negative goes. So the negative has to go with the 1 because this is going to the left, whereas this one is going up. And then to find the hypotenuse, so 2 squared is 4, -1 squared is 1, and then that equals 5. And I would have to take the square root of that then to get this by itself. So this will be the square root of 5. So sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse. So 2 over the square root of 5. So if we rationalize, this will be 2 square root of 5 over 5. And then cosine theta is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And once we rationalize, this will be negative square root of 5 over 5. All right, so starting by finding sine of 2 theta. So again, we have to use the formula 2 times sine theta cosine theta. So this will be 2 times 2 square root of 5 over 5 times negative square root of 5 over 5. So multiplying straight across, so I would take 2 times -1. So that's going to be -4. And then square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. And then 2 over 1, so 1 times 5 times 5 is 25. And if I simplified that, we would have -20 over 25. And each of those is divisible by 5. So this is going to reduce to -4/5 for that final answer. All right, and then cosine of 2 theta. So again, we get to pick which formula we want to use. So I am going to use the top one, where we have the 2 squares. So cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. And to make it a little bit easier to work through, instead of doing this one, I'm going to go back here and use this. So this will be -1 over the square root of 5, and then I have to remember to square that. And then sine, same thing. I'm going to go back to this one and use this before we rationalized. And that's just going to make our calculations a little bit easier. Okay. So squaring the numerator, that just becomes a +1. And then square root of 5 squared is 5. 2 squared is 4. Square root of 5 squared is 5. So 1 minus 4 is -3 over 5. And then to figure out our answer, what quadrant that is in, all students take class. Both of my answers are negative for sine and cosine, so that can only happen in this quadrant. So quadrant 3 is where my answer is at.